Hi guys, Matt here from the Traveling Together Journal, bringing you another camper build update.
In previous videos, I built a hard-sided pop-up camper, installed a solar electrical system, and a fridge freezer on a custom fridge slide. Today, I am going to install a fresh water system. The system will consist of a tank, pump, filter, faucet, sink, gray water tank, and an outdoor shower hose.
Alright, so I haven't changed anything about the cab. So we still have our old storage setup, homemade center console, and this storage area behind the driver's seat. It was a good system, it worked well for us, but now this is going to be where I put the water tank. So I'm going to pull this whole thing out and probably try to reuse some of the framing and stuff from this.
I cut down the steel frame from our old storage box to build a mount for our new 20-gallon fresh water tank. The curved floor of the truck cab made it tough to get accurate measurements, so I tacked the mount together in place to make sure that the tank would sit level and that the mounting holes would all line up. Then I finished welding the bracket over on the workbench and grinded down the welds where the tank will sit. After a coat of Rust-Oleum rusty metal primer and stop rust enamel, it was ready to be installed. The tank mount is secured in place with 3 bolts that used to hold the rear seat in place, and the bolt that holds the driver's seatbelt to the floor of the cab. I covered the top of the mount in foam rubber tape to avoid wearing through the tank, which test fit nicely. But before I put the tank in permanently, I have a few more things to do in this corner of the cab. I built a wood mount for the water pump that simply wedges into this corner, and the pump is screwed down to the wood. Power for the pump comes from the house battery fuse block inside the camper. It runs through the camper floor, then through a wire gland in the back of the truck cab, where it is hooked up to a switch mounted on the water tank mount, and finally hooked up to the water pump. I installed the first couple of fittings on the bottom of the water tank, then installed it in the cab of the truck. But I didn't like the way the ratchet straps were resting on the plastic tank, so I made a few chafing guards out of scrap aluminum flat bar and foam rubber tape. I drilled a hole through the rear bumper and welded a mount on the underside so I could install a hose bib. Then I cut a hole through the camper floor and sealed it with Sikaflex 221 and a plastic through-hole fitting. This is to supply water to the sink that I installed in the passenger side cabinet. Once I cut the holes for the sink and faucet, I coated the exposed wood in epoxy resin and installed the faucet with its provided O-rings and the sink with siliconized acrylic latex around its mounting edge and around the drain fitting. The water coming out of the faucet will be filtered. I bought filter housings and filter elements from ClearSource RV and used stainless steel plumbing fittings to connect the housings. Then I built my own mounting bracket. If I had more space, I could have just mounted the housings on cheap standard brackets, but I don't have the space to access the mounting screws once the filter is under the counter. So I made a bracket that I pre-installed on the filter housings, then mounted the entire unit to the wall under the counter with Sikaflex 221 and panhead screws. These various components of the system are plumbed together with braided PVC hose and barbed hose fittings. Dipping the end of the hose in hot soapy water can make it a bit easier to install the barbed fittings. Alright guys, time for a tour of the water system. We're going into the cab here. And this is where our water tank is mounted behind the driver's seat. It's a 20-gallon water tank, and it's strapped down to that steel bracket that we welded together earlier. Strapped down with 3 ratchet straps, and the ratchets are padded from the tank with those aluminum spacers that we made earlier. There is quite a bit of space left back there. I'm kind of just leaving it that way for now.
we'll figure out what we want to do with the different spaces once we start using the camper a bit, figure out where we want to store things, how we're able to fit stuff in the camper. But for now, looking at the water tank, it is a sump tank, so the water comes out of the bottom, so we actually can get all of the water out of the tank. Runs through the ball valve there, which is open, and gets to the spin down filter. That's a 40 micron stainless steel mesh filter in there, and that's for catching stuff like sand or leaves or anything like that if we source water from a river or a well. And you can kind of clean that out by using this valve down here. The water would run through this hose, which you can just stick out the side of the cab, and that would help dislodge sand or anything that got stuck in that first filter element. It would also be an option if something happened to our electric pump. We would be able to access the water still by opening that valve and then having it come out here. You could fill your pot from this spot and then go boil it in the kitchen. But normally that would just be stashed up in there. And from the spin down filter, the water runs through this hose and into the pump. That's a 3 gallon per minute pump with a built-in shut-off switch. So if the pump pressurizes the system up to 50 psi, the pump then shuts off automatically. I also have a manual switch mounted just above it up there. And it's currently off, but so there you go. You could hear the pump get activated and pressurize the system. So it hit 50 psi and then shut off. From there, the water runs out the back of the cab and goes along the inside of the frame to the back of the truck. And at the back of the truck, we've got this fitting mounted on that piece of angle iron we welded on the underside of the rear bumper. And it has a ball valve on it. And then the water comes out this quick disconnect fitting here. And we have this fitting that'll just screw onto a normal garden hose style fitting. So I'll rig something up there later on with like a shower head, that sort of thing, so we can rinse off our feet before getting into the truck and take showers and stuff when we want to. And that's just controlled with the ball valve right now. So plenty of water pressure coming out of there. There is also a T-fitting up along that cross member there, and then the hose runs over to the passenger side and comes into the camper through this through hole fitting in the floor, and then runs underneath the refrigerator. So if we climb up in here and slide the fridge out, you can see the hose coming into the camper, going up the wall, and then into our water filter housing. This one's a 5 micron filter, and this one's a 0.02 micron filter. So it is supposed to get rid of bacteria and viruses and cysts. So it should be able to make clean drinking water from any freshwater source. And that comes over to this side of the cabinet and goes up into the faucet. We got our sink and faucet installed, so you could hear the pump turn on and off as we turn the water on and off. From the sink, the water would run down through the drain hose and into our 5 gallon gray water tank. That way when we're doing the dishes, little food scraps and stuff all end up in the tank. And then we can shut off the valve and remove the drain hose. be able to pick up the whole tank and walk it off away from camp and away from any other campers in order to dump it out. So there you go. That's the basic system. Only 2 outlets on the water system. The one inside will just be for doing the dishes and drinking water. The one outside would be for hosing anything off, hosing ourselves off. Our old system was only 15 gallons of water carried in 3 jerry cans. So this one has a little bit more water capacity, and it should be a lot easier to use the water. Hopefully it won't be taking 15 minutes to fill a water bottle anymore.
This water system cost me $640, which is not cheap. I could have saved a bit of money by using a cheaper water tank or cheaper plumbing fittings instead of stainless steel, but I console my bank account by comparing it to what companies are charging for Overland water purifiers that don't include a tank, faucet, sink, or all the little pieces that are necessary to plumb and mount everything. In the end, I'm happy with how the system has turned out, and I learned a few things along the way. Check out the shopping list in the description box below for links to the materials I used to build this water system. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me next time as I continue to build out the interior of the camper. Thanks for watching.